Northern News Network special review segment. I'm Genevieve, and today we'll be filling you in on some breaking news about this year's presidential election. But first, we'll be reviewing the major events that happened from 1858 to this year, 1860. It has been an eventful few years in the United States, and tensions between the North and South have only increased. In 1858, the Lincoln-Douglas debates brought Republican candidate for Senate, Abraham Lincoln, into the political spotlight for the first time. Tonight, Henrietta, our expert commentator, will analyze the impact of this event. Also, our reporter Josephine will visit the site of the 1859 tragedy in Harper's Ferry. Then, our commentator will look at the Crittenden Compromise and predict what she believes will happen and with the South and secession. Finally, stay tuned for a first-look interview where our reporter will sit down with President Abraham Lincoln to discuss his win in this year's election, the crisis in the South, and his views on the Crittenden Compromise. Over to you, Henrietta.
Thanks, Genevieve. A couple years ago, during the Illinois state election campaign, an amateur Republican candidate called longtime Democratic Senator Stephen A. Douglas for his Senate seat. Who would have thought that the candidate, Abraham Lincoln, would end up being the president 2 years later? I remembered when Lincoln challenged Senator Douglas, and though I supported Lincoln's views, I thought that Douglas would absolutely destroy him in the debates. There ended up being 7 debates in all, which lasted from August to October. Old Abe looked impossibly out of his league, but he threw himself into his logical arguments with passion. The most famous debate was where Lincoln challenged the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision. As I'm sure you remember, Lincoln asked what would happen if the people voted slavery down. Would the people or the court win? Douglas and the Southerners managed to answer by insisting that no matter what the Supreme Court decided, the people would end slavery if they so choose. Douglas won the Senate seat probably because he backed popular sovereignty so strong. Still, Lincoln clearly won morally. Also, after analyzing what was said to be the debate, I believe that Lincoln was playing for higher stakes than a senatorship. Soon after, Lincoln emerged as a possible Republican candidate for the presidency, and Douglas hurt his chances for winning the presidency by winning Illinois. Back to you, Genevieve.
Thank you, Henrietta. As the tensions rise between the North and South, those debates become more prevalent than ever. On a more somber note, right now, Josephine is standing at the site of the October 1859 tragedy at Harper's Ferry. What's it like there, Joe?
Thanks, Genevieve. Though over a year has passed since 7 men lost their lives and many others were injured here at Harper's Ferry, I don't think this scenic Western Virginia town will ever be the same. In October of last year, the infamous John Brown planned to invade the South and called upon the slaves to rise. He obtained several $1,000s to purchase firearms and seized the federal arsenal with about 20 followers. They killed 7 innocent people, including a free black. Most of the slaves didn't know about the strike and failed to rise. The U.S. Marines quickly captured Brown and his men. He was convicted of murder and treason and was hanged not long after. He became something of a martyr and inspiration to the more radical abolitionists. But the effects of his actions have been a disaster. The South has only grown increasingly hostile to the North because of Brown's murderous actions. What the Southerners don't understand is that many of us more moderate Northerners are just as appalled with Brown's attack. The abolitionists, on the other hand, are mad about his death and don't seem to remember what Brown did. The tension and anger in this town is just inspiration to the more radical abolitionists, but the effects of his actions have been a disaster. The abolitionists, on the other hand, are mad about his death and don't seem to remember what Brown did. The tension and anger in this town is palpable even a year later. And I don't know if the Union is going to be able to stay intact. Back to you, Genevieve.
Thank you for that update, Joe. There is a little bit of hope for keeping the North and South together in James Henry Crittenden's plan. What do you think about it, Henrietta?
Well, Jen, as with all compromises, no one is happy with it. The growing possibility of bloodshed between the North and the South has made the final effort a frantic one. Crittenden's proposed amendments are designed to appease the South, but is alienating the North in the process. It allows for future states, whether they are above the 30-60 line, or to have slavery. It guarantees slavery supporters full rights in the Southern territories and has the potential to turn all new territories into slave states. I know that the Northerners and the abolitionists are far from happy with the idea of compromise, and the rumor has it that Lincoln will veto the South from seceding if that is what they plan to do. It looks like it could be a tough few years coming up in the United States. Back to you, Jen.
It does look like that, Henrietta. As for President Lincoln's views on the subject, let's go over to Joe, who's standing with him right now.
Thanks, Jen. Well, Mr. President, congratulations on your recent election.
Thank you.
Your election this year was far from typical. Can you tell us about it?
Well, as the relationship between the North and the South became more strained, the Democratic Party suffered considerably. The party split along sectional lines and they backed two candidates. The Northern Democrats backed Douglas, but that angered the Southern Democrats. The Southern Democrats chose John C. Breckinridge, who is known for his moderate views. A middle-of-the-road group, sometimes called the Do-Nothing Party, nominated John Bell. The Republican Party sensed that these splits would give us a chance of winning the presidency. I was nominated as the Republican candidate.
Do you think the split is the reason you were elected?
I can't say for sure, of course. My platform was supported by nearly all non-Southern groups, so that was helpful. Still, I was minority president because I only received about 40% of the votes, but that was enough to edge out the other candidates. I actually didn't receive a singular popular vote on the South and wasn't even on the ballot as well.
How do you feel about the South's response to you?
It saddens me that I am so hated by the South and that they believe I want the Union to split. That is the last thing I want to happen. I hope there's some way we can come to an agreement and avoid the breaking apart of the Union.
Well, what do you think about the Crittenden Compromise?
I reject everything it stands for. I will not spread slavery in an attempt to appease the South's hurt feelings. My platform flatly states that I oppose slavery, and as a matter of principle, I won't.
I know you're busy. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
You're welcome. I am glad to keep the people informed with my intentions.
All of us here at NNN wish you the best of luck in keeping the Union together. Back to you, Jen.
Thanks, Joe. Well, everyone, that wraps up our special review segment. Thank you for watching the Northern News Network, your #1 source for breaking news. Good night, and make sure to tune in tomorrow for an update on the South's planned succession.